Hello and welcome. Oh, would you like to see me actually? Okay, fine. Here we go. Welcome to Lead with Leanne, your definitive guide for exceptional leadership and successful entrepreneurship. Airing every week at 2 p.m. Pacific time exclusively on winwinwomen.tv. I am your host, Leanne, and I'm thrilled to be sharing this journey with you. Each week on Lead with Leanne, you'll join me as we delve into the inspiring stories of established leaders like our guest today and innovative entrepreneurs. We'll uncover just what it takes to build a brand from scratch and lead with authority and grace and turn business aspirations into tangible successes. Our show is not only about imparting knowledge, it's about creating a community. It's a space for us to laugh and learn and leap forward together in our quest for professional and personal growth. Whether you're embarking on a new entrepreneurial adventure, always fun, or looking to inject some fresh energy into an existing one, there will always be insights for you here. So get ready for thought-provoking conversations, enlightening insights, actionable advice, and the support of a network that champions the win-win philosophy. Learn to lead with passion, purpose, and determination right here on Lead with Leanne. So let me tell you about my guest today. With a decade of experience in innovation and investing, and as an award-winning corporate innovator and entrepreneur, Vanessa offers a network of both accredited, institutional, and non-accredited investor unique investment opportunities for social impact. That's a mouthful. So we're going to have to, dissect that a little bit today, and I'm excited to do that with you. Recent highlights include raising $775,000 in 36 hours through an enterprise platform and securing $100,000 in 3 months for impact ventures in the Atlantic region. Outside of her trailblazing work in democratizing investments, Vanessa is a multi-award winning author, host of the Human Challenge, an Amazon Music and Acast Indie Podcast Amplifier 2023, and certified 200-hour meditation teacher on Insight Timer. She has been featured in national and international news outlets, including CTV, City News, Bold Journey, Canvas Rebel, Psyche, Reg, and more. So Vanessa strongly believes in reconnecting communities with, wait for it, humanity. Welcome, Vanessa. Are you there?
I am. I am. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that introduction as well. Really grateful to be here.
That was a mouthful. You've done a lot. What are you,
Indeed.
like 80 years old?
No, inside, I like to embrace my inner 80-year-old self. I,
Do you though? Do you?
I do. I do. The retired life. Are you kidding?
Another reason people become entrepreneurs. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
So I hear something in the background. Makes me very curious. It sounds almost like a
It's
duck.
definitely it's a blue jay. It's they've been quiet all day, and I don't know. Right now, they were like, "Oh, it's showtime. Let's just get yappy." And I was like, "Great," because
No,
yes,
it's
this is my outdoor office. I work in the summer. I'm in Northern Ontario, and it's very cold here for almost every month of the year. And so in summer, the outdoors is the office.
I embrace that 100%. And I really, really do. Last year for my birthday in August, I did my show from the boat
Ah, I love that.
because we have a boat. And I thought, you
Yes.
know what? This is the whole point. This year, I
Mm,
am going to actually not do a show during my birthday week because I choose not to.
yeah,
Sometimes it's nice to
exactly.
take a break. And I
Yeah.
understand that's what you've been up to lately as well.
Yeah, I've been, summer's been quiet, which is nice. I think it's just a nice time to just hang around and enjoy nature and enjoy sun. And like I said, up here in Northern Ontario, it's the best time, to do that. Just to hang around, be outside, kind of reconnect with myself. And I really think nature is a great way to reconnect with ourselves.
100%. And for those of us who maybe aren't completely familiar with Canada, which side
Oh
of
yes.
continent is Ontario?
So I'm it's actually fairly central, but definitely a little bit more eastern. I'm right above Michigan, actually, would
Right
be
above
the best way I can orient an American audience.
So for the Americans who know their states, it's above
Yes. Yeah, I'm actually on the border of Michigan. I'm on the border of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So I cross the border and I'm in the US
Do you
on
do
the
that
bridge.
much?
I do actually. When I travel, I usually travel through the US. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have travel schedule coming up?
Most of my travel coming up actually is going to be fairly national. I'll be in Vancouver in the middle of August. But who knows? There might be some international travel, maybe Europe in the fall. We'll see.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
what and why would you be traveling?
Most of that would be for my work with impact investing. We're getting into blended finance, which is, really how do we activate and deploy and bring together different forms of capital. So when we talk about investors, you can have impact investors, you can also have institutions, but how do we work together with philanthropists, with nonprofits? How do we bring all these different sources of funding together into deals that really help build communities? So a lot of times you see blended finance for development projects in developing countries, but there's a lot of work here in Canada, at least, around how do we do that for just like community driven organizations, for nonprofit organizations, social purpose organizations. How do we engage with these different actors and these different funds and funders, and how do we bring them together into a certain vehicle so that we can diversify this risk a little bit? A lot of times it's very challenging for larger institutional investors to invest money into impact or community organizations, just because they require a lot of money and it doesn't always meet the timeframes in which they want to see a return. And so if we can de-risk that by using grants and other philanthropic type of funds, we can bring them all together into a deal. So that's some of the work that we're doing.
So as somebody that's not in the investing world, that raises like, about 30 questions, but we'll start with one. Um, when you say, you said the phrase, you didn't use the word mitigate, but decrease the risk.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So when we talk about from that perspective, I think I mentioned a lot of institutional investors. These are larger investors that have like hundreds of millions of dollars that they're looking to start investing into different projects. If you're a smaller, social organization or nonprofit, it's a lot of risk for them to put, because they need to make sure that they're going to get a big enough return that will, support all their investors that are investing in their fund. And so sometimes a social purpose organization might take a little bit too long to actually generate a return. Sometimes they might, the nature of a lot of the projects that they do are sometimes just a lot smaller. And so when you can be an institutional investor and combine your money with, let's say, another grant or with a philanthropic funder, that risk is decreased for them. So now it means they can invest less because other people are coming in to invest more. It also means that maybe they might be willing to take a smaller return. Most institutional investors will say, we're looking for X% of a return, but they might be willing to go lower if you can get other philanthropic investors or funds to come in and invest with them. So that's what we mean when we say decrease risk.
Okay, excellent.
Mhm.
And so when I hear philanthropic, I often think of, well, obviously nonprofit, things like that, or philanthropic, I think of community organizations, so
Mhm.
forth. And I think that's your passion. So where is the ROI in that? They're truly looking for an ROI?
A lot of times when you're institutional investors, yes, those are, they need those hard facts. And because it's a math, right? It's about math. And at the end of the day, they have to balance those returns. But, for myself, like you said, someone who's impact investors, especially, our ROI is a little bit less math based for us. Impact can be a little bit more than just what's the number I'm getting back. It's more about like, I'll look at a deal and think, okay, how much of this community is being built? How does this build communities, and in what ways are they doing that? So we're looking at deals that look at things. For example, we have one organization who builds. Uh, they have like hydroplaning gardening for northern and remote communities. And so for myself, when I look at a deal like that, I'm thinking, well, it's not so much about the return, but the return on impact here would be, well, how many communities are they building? How much, how many, if they're building these hydroplaning garden centers, does this mean that they can bring in more fruits and vegetables over the year? How many more times? Is it through seasons, et cetera, et cetera? And so I think there are a lot of ways when we look at impact and impact investing to measure a return as opposed to your return on interest. We can look at return on impact, and that's something that we do as impact investors.
So anybody watching or listening, do you think she knows what she's talking about? Very clearly, you know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
which begs my question of how did you get started?
I welcome this question so much because a lot of times we think that to invest we have to be super wealthy and have or come from wealth. I come from immigrant parents. My mother's Mexican, my father's Italian. Our blood is work, 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 work. And so we were never, I would say, necessarily like, broke or anything, but my grandparents did have to come into Canada and work their butts off. And so we're not like super wealthy people, but we do know how to manage our money. But I think that it's a lot easier than we think to get involved. There's a lot of, in my introduction, you talked about democratizing investment. And so now there are a lot of opportunities for individuals to invest into startups as if you were a retail investor. So you don't need to be a high net worth individual. You can use a lot of different platforms. In Canada, we have one called Front Funder. I think there's a few more in the US. And in fact, I think there's more in the US, but these are all platforms that allow you to invest like $1,000, $2,000, even less than that. Sometimes it's like $200 into startups that are just emerging. And also, there are a lot of similar platforms for you if you're interested in impact investing and investing in companies that are aligning themselves with the United Nations sustainability goals. So, definitely a lot easier than we think. And really, it's going to come down to passion and when we talk a lot about as investors, what's our investment thesis? And so, who do we want to invest in? Are we committed to supporting gender diverse founders, Black founders? Are there certain causes that we're really passionate about? And so when we look at all these different factors, how can we put them together and say, okay, this is how I'm going to support with my capital? A lot of times the best starting point we'll typically offer is maybe saying, can you take like, maybe when you look at your in total assets, right? So basically how much you're earning minus your cost to survive. Can you take like 5 to 10% of that as a starting point and say, here's what I'm willing out of that. Here's what I can invest in these newer emerging organizations, social purpose organizations, or technology ventures.
And so when I'm thinking about this, I'm hearing also when I've invested into, friends or families businesses as well, where, they need the startup money. I get that. And then eventually, but you get a percentage of stock or future stock or whatever. And that's the kind of ROI that you're also talking about in some cases, at least.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you. For myself, like impact investing in general, but even impact investing, there's kind of a scale. And so, for myself, when I think of me, like my impact investing is yes, return on interest on investment is important. But for me, it's really more about building community. So I actually fall more within like the philanthropic part of the scale as opposed to like impact investing, because when I look at these factors, that's just more important to me. I actually have my own foundation, the Being Human Foundation. I incorporated that in Los Angeles a year and a half ish ago, and I actually just incorporated as well in Canada. And so, it's just a vehicle for me to say, here's that X% that I would like to put in, and, I can deploy it into the causes that I care about. And then we also do a lot of mindfulness type of community building activities in different communities. We work with women that experience gender-based violence. We work with activists as well for different causes. And how do we use mindfulness to, really support ourselves and ground ourselves, but also connect ourselves to some of these causes that are really important. Sustainability is another one, right? So there's a lot of different ways, and it's not as hard to get started as we think. And I'm really grateful for that question because, again, especially, women, we tend to think there's we always think it's hard. The system tells it's a lot harder than it is, but there are tools out there available now that we really can get started whenever we want.
Wonderful. There's so many things I want to dive into. I wanted though right now take just a quick pause. If you're listening to this replay, just know that you can come and be part of this live conversation when I do this every Monday, most Mondays anyway. I might take a day or two off here and there throughout the year, but most Mondays you can come here at 2 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Central Time to winwinwomen.tv, and you can join these live shows. Now we put them up on all sorts of platforms everywhere, also on YouTube. And you're finding us on the Win Win Women channel, which is awesome. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I wonder what she looks like, I wonder what they look like, come on over and check us out. You can actually find us on YouTube as well as on my channel uh, if you type in Leanne Lyon. But Win Win Women, I'm going to transition there. And by the way, if you're live streaming, you can come on over right now. Come over to winwinwomen.tv and click. And if you want to ask Vanessa or myself any questions, feel free to come on over and we'd welcome that. But winwinwomen.tv, of course, is an organization focused on raising up women show hosts, but also for the purpose of helping women all over the world have access to women experts. Because we know that people often learn best from the people that look, feel, sound like they do to some degree. And there's huge, future of where we want to take winwinwomen.com and .tv. And it goes along the lines of what you mentioned, the United Nations shoot, now I just lost the term, but you just rattled it off. We also have those values, and you are muted at the moment, but um, and I know you mentioned wanting to meet Paula Fellingham. I'm not sure if we made that connection already or if we're still going to, but we will. Have you met her?
I have not, and
Okay.
I would love to. I think it'd be a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, yeah, she's very involved with that. I see. No, that's okay. Stay unmuted. It's real life. This is a real show. And it sounds like there's a real dog in the background. And that is totally fine. There we
It's my
go.
girl. I love her. We
Ah,
went camping. She's
oh,
a
good.
cutie.
Can I see her?
Yes. Sure. Ivy, come.
Come on.
The bird is a lot more exciting right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if she shows up,
Maybe she'll come. She'll usually come by.
and for anybody just listening to the podcast, what does she look like?
Ivy is a Catahoula leopard dog. So she is gorgeous. She's got little, she's mostly like dark color, but she actually has these like leopard spots. Very, very beautiful dog. And she knows it. She's pretty and she knows it. Yes, she's
Oh, well,
very
that's
cute.
often.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna also just mention you talk about the being human foundation, and
Mhm.
I do talk about people, but we're so often busy doing instead of being. But what was your inspiration for calling
Yes.
your foundation that?
The foundation really came from like an entire journey of just understanding how my inner humanity equates to kind of collective humanity, outer humanity, the connection between my individual humanity and collective humanity. And so it was actually the Being Human Foundation came from my first book, which is called Human. And Human was really my journey about being human to myself and how that helped me be human to others and the rest of the world. And then from there actually came the Human Challenge, which was my show, because it was like, how can we be human together? We have to really challenge ourselves. We live in a system. We live in sometimes society sets up these conditions in which we can't always be ourselves, and so sometimes we have to challenge ourselves to be more human. And so on the show we talk about what are the human challenges in today's world, the challenges of being human, and how we can challenge ourselves to be more human for the greater good. And then from there came the Being Human Foundation, sort of the let's be human for the greater good part, right? Let's put all these things into practice. And so that's really where the Being Human Foundation came from. And very, very proud of it, proud of the work we do, and then proud of the mission behind it as well. And mindfulness and community building really fits in there quite nicely, because again, mindfulness is this inner humanity. It's about oneness. At least my mindfulness training was grounded in Buddhism. And so Buddhism is really about oneness, this oneness within, oneness without. And so when we take those principles and then we use them within our communities, it really increases like community engagement, our willingness to support communities, be a part of communities, etc. And so it's really, really, really beautiful work that we do.
And how can people find your podcast and how often do you post?
Podcast is about bi-weekly or so, and you can actually go to vanessafurlano.com/the human challenge. It's also on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as well, all under the same name. So you can definitely find it there. But it's about bi-weekly, and it's really interesting. We speak to, or I speak to a lot of really great people. I speak to authors, I speak to Olympians, I've spoken to other, mindfulness teachers, and it's really a wide variety of conversations. We talk about well-being. I've spoken to, authors who study things like refugees and immigration. So again, this whole idea of inner humanity and outer humanity, right? I think outer humanity are these other issues in the world, these causes that we should be mindful of, and not even the causes themselves, but being mindful of how they're all interconnected. We can't talk about gender-based violence without talking about climate change, because the largest group of people that are impacted by sustainability issues and climate change are actually, one, refugees. There's a lot of refugee climate displacement, and then two, women. So all these things come connected, which are also connected to the military complex. And so how do we, again, how do we bring these things together and realize that they're all interconnected, and how can we as human beings contribute in different ways to maybe support these, or like not supporting them, but supporting that they stop, or what are the things that we do, or who do we interact with in which we can actually maybe make a difference in some of these spaces.
And I mean, that interactivity is so important. In my favorite book, they talk about the fact that look at the human body. If we were
Mm,
all eyes, how good would we be? We wouldn't have an ear, we wouldn't have a mouth, we wouldn't have a. Do you know that you become effectively lame if you do not have a big toe?
mm,
So, the diversity within the body is also important when we look at the diversity of what we really need in the world. Even, and that's why I really try to embrace the fact that there are different sides to different issues. And it's
mhm,
not a right or a wrong thing. It really isn't. It is a both because, where one side will say, well, you're not doing this, the other side is also standing up for a different reason and a different purpose. So it's interesting and it's challenging for a lot of people to say that there's a lot of wishing for right and wrong and black and white,
mm,
and truly we need to have that interconnection. If it is, how I see it as well. Am I triggering you? Is there? What are you thinking
mhm.
when I'm saying all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the yes, this idea when I was saying earlier about the structure of society, that's part of it. This idea that there's right and there's wrong, there's yes and there's no, and it's not really real, right? As human beings, that's not even who we are. I think of one of the questions that I'm often asked is, like kind of like, what's your journey, and what have you done, or what do you do? And I'm like, well, actually, I'm very multifaceted, and when you read my bio, I do a bunch of different things, and I think it's because I embrace the fact that I'm not just one thing. I allow myself to be whatever I want to be and whoever I want to be, my creative self, my philanthropic self, my corporate self, my all these versions of me, like they all exist together, and they're going to come out and manifest in these different ways. And so I think that that should also be celebrated, that we are not just these stagnant, we're beings, we are composed of these different versions of us, these different parts of us, and that
Yeah,
should be celebrated.
absolutely. And your creative self. Because when we first got together today before the show, you were mentioning that a lot of your
Mm.
creativity is getting unleashed. I mentioned that I found a TED Talk, I mean to look it up, that talked about boredom is actually really important to help unleash creativity. And you kind of agreed when I said that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think it's funny. I think boredom to us, because we're just so naturally now, especially in these like modern days, we're just so naturally attuned to just like be busy. And so I think boredom is just not being busy, is like really just being like, actually, instead of like answering my emails and checking my phone and checking this and getting this notification, I think I'm just gonna be still for a moment. And so absolutely, I think your brain, your body needs that time to just flow. And yeah, my creativity, I don't know what it is about summer, but I think just when you slow down and really just take the time to just be one. I've been very creative the last little bit. For most of the summer, I've been writing music, and it's been quite nice. I've been writing my second book as well, which has been very, very fun. It's kind of a reflection on my first book, and I wrote Human 5 years ago, so it's 5 years later, and these concepts in Human, how much do you still agree with them? What's changed, and so it's been a very interesting study going through all of that, and being creative, and then writing music on the side. So it's been really nice. It's been really wonderful.
And I appreciate that as well, that, what you're saying is that there's a journey. Who we
Mm,
were 5 years ago is not who we are today. Likewise, judging people on who they are, who they were, maybe isn't relevant to who they are. My daughter and I went to dinner this past weekend, and she ran into a high school classmate. They hadn't seen each other in years, and they had
no.
a little bit of a catch-up session, and where they were when they were 18, graduated from high school versus where they are now in their mid 20s. Obviously, there's a lot of change that happens in those 5 years. But, can we give grace to people to
Mhm.
emerge and to grow and to change and even change opinions over time periods? But a lot of time people want to hold others to the fire of what they did or who they were. And that's not always appropriate, I would say. How about you?
Yeah, I think what comes up for me in that is letting go. Sometimes it's not even a question of like appropriateness or not appropriateness, because I think all our experiences are valid. We experience the world in the way that we experience them, but can we let go of those things? Can we detach ourselves from that story that we're connected to? And I deal with this a lot with certain relationships in my life that are challenging, but I've learned that a lot of the stories that my inner dialogue tells myself have been ways for me to cope, or ways for me to uh, like almost like defense mechanisms. And so how can you acknowledge those things, still validate how you feel without necessarily blaming people, pointing fingers at people, but just letting go of it, or even blaming yourself, like the fact that you're going to have coping mechanisms, that's a very normal part of just being human, because we're not always equipped with all these tools that tell us how to deal with things, so we have to learn as we go. And so can you give yourself that grace, I think is the thing that comes up for me. And I think when we give ourselves that grace, we hold space with others so that we can all kind of sit in this grace together.
And that's why it's okay if your dog barks.
Yeah.
Because it's just part of, I mean, it's just life.
Yeah.
That's one reason I love doing a live show, is
Yeah.
there's no expectation that I'm going to edit anything. It's up front. We're not going to edit. This is live streaming now. And really, I just take it as is and bring it forward. And I love that part of it. It's part of what I like to say is just part of human too. If our eye itches, if our hair gets on
Hmm.
our shoulders, whatever the case is, these are our normal mannerisms and who we are. One thing when you were talking that came up for me is also just sometimes, who I was at one point was very different, and my my decisions, my decision making process was so different that I reached a point where I had to actually just forgive that person for who she was, what she did, how she acted, and like you said, let it go and just say, I'm good. I don't dislike that person. I wouldn't be who I am without that person being part of my past, but I also don't hold myself guilty of anything
Hmm.
in the present for past decisions. Um, I can't change it, but
Right.
I can
Yeah.
forget and forgive it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that, you know, forgiveness, letting go, detachment, from a Buddhist perspective, that's this idea of a really detachment is what that is. Can we just love and hold space without expectation, and even again, like the idea of being human. These things do come up for us. We're going to be in certain spaces, things are going to come up. Can we hold space with ourselves and the things that come up, without that judgment, without that blame, without on anybody else, and even onto ourselves. A lot of times we might not blame others, but we might blame ourselves for the way that we feel. But can we just hold space, allow these things to be there, and knowing that this is just part of our humanness and all the things that really make us human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you are very enlightened. I mean,
Yep.
um, You are youthful looking, and you are very enlightened in your understanding. So I'm curious, when you were younger, much younger, let's say not so young that you were completely dependent on your parents or they needed to orchestrate your life completely, but not independent, not even a teenager yet, younger than that, maybe
Mhm.
8 or 9 years old, where you have some freedom to get out and do a few things, make some decisions, choose your books, choose your activities to a degree. What did Vanessa do? How is your
Mm.
world? What did it
My
compose of?
world at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember playing outside a lot. I remember swing sets, trampolines. Yeah, I loved the swing set. That's probably a little bit younger, but I think up to 10 I was still sort of, hanging around the swing set in the backyard. I have a younger sister and a younger brother, and so that was, the fun. That was fun for us. I think I still was a very maybe I don't know if I would say creative per se. I used to draw a lot actually. That would have been how my creativity. Now it's a lot more music and writing, but at the time I used to draw a lot. I always had a sketch pad with me and I used to draw things in nature, even like book covers or anything that really drew was that I was drawn to or resonated. I would draw a lot of things. But I like to be creative, but I think also imaginative. I was very engaged with my imagination, and in very real world ways, not necessarily imagination, not like fantasy, but imagining what the world could be. So that was I think me at 10 years old. I was 10 years old, Vanessa. Loved swing sets. Loved to be a superhero. That was my, the swing set was the gateway and the trampoline was the gateway into being the superhero and the superpowers. And it was just like a jump and a somersault. And yeah, then I was super Vanessa and I had whatever superhero power I wanted. But and I do think that's important because I think that that part of me is still here, and then I welcome that part of me because the world, we take ourselves very seriously in the world these days. And I think it's good to be able to keep that youthness, that young nature within us alive as well.
I love that you said that you would imagine. And I was going to ask, what did you imagine? And then you answered it. You actually brought it out all by yourself.
Yes.
Superhero Vanessa. But you also
Yes.
said something else. Did you hear what you said that you used to draw? I mean, I know you did, but what did you say you used
Nature, book covers.
to draw? Book covers.
Yes.
You drew book covers. Tell me about that. Why would you draw book covers?
Well, what I mean, like I would draw book covers of books that I would see and that I liked the covers, or even just pictures. Sometimes I would draw if you're like skimming through a magazine and there's like certain headshots or of just images in general. I would draw those. I used to draw. I used one of my favorite bands when I was really young was the All American Rejects, and so I have like so many photos of them that I just drew out of posters and I would redraw them. And yeah, I love drawing. I have not drawn in a very long time. Maybe I need to come back to that part of me.
Yeah. Well, isn't it fascinating that you used to draw book covers and now you're an author?
Yes, yes, it is. It is. It really
That's
is.
fun. Yeah, because that's what I find when I ask that question. It's like the only question that goes from show to show is, how do we tie back into where we took joy and where we found joy and where
Mhm.
our imaginations took us when we had no real other thing to do.
Yeah.
At 10, we don't have money. We're, probably not invested into a professional sport yet. Rare people do. You've interviewed Olympians that may have been, but for the average person, which you and I are both average, I would say, uh, we had a time in our lives where we were very free, and that was the time. And how do we bring that forward into our today world
Mhm.
and our today happiness? And more often than not, I find that people who have can find that connection between that time and this time are the people that are not only happy but successful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fun question to ask people, even, if you're talking about them and seeing where they're at in the world. If they say, yeah, I played sports all the time. It's all I ever wanted to do. And now today they're sitting behind a desk. I'm like, really? And how happy are you?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah, I used to do a lot of biking as well
sure.
at that age. Like, I love to be outside on the bike. and I still do that a lot. Actually, I like to be out in nature, and now I don't I have a bike, but I do a lot more. Like hiking, love to hike, and I was tenting this weekend with my dog, and I like paddle boarding as well. Love paddle boarding. So I think all of that, still being connected to nature, in different ways, and all of that again, really in ways keeps the imagination, I think, just free. I think I said earlier, this idea of creativity for me comes from spaciousness, and I think that being outdoors helps keep that space clear, I guess, and clean and fresh.
Yeah, I lived across the street from a wetland in a lake, and I could literally sneak into a golf course that was just at the end of the street. So I
uh,
spent a lot of time, in the river or, in the trees or, in the marsh exploring. I was an entrepreneur at a young age. I would sometimes be in the river and, golfers like, "Do you see my ball?" And they didn't expect us to just pop it out. I'm like, "Whoa, what ball? I don't see a ball that I'm standing on." You know, well, if you can find the orange ball that I just, I'll give you a quarter.
uh,
And we would just find a lot of golf balls,
yeah.
of course, in the river and just lay them out. Here they are, 10 cents, 20, we'd value the, how much, well, this is a 10-cent ball. That's a 50-cent ball.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
That was me, at 10
That's
years
so
old.
funny.
Because we could do that. That was part of what we did. I was an entrepreneur then and today.
That's
So
really funny.
it is fun when you start thinking about and exploring that with friends and family. Good dinner time conversation too.
Yeah, no kidding. That's
Very
awesome.
cool. So what else would you like to, I mean, first of all, once again, anybody on the Win-Win Women, come on over to winwinwomen.tv if you want to ask Vanessa a question. If you're on the live stream, you're welcome. If you're listening to the recording though, how can people reach you? How can they find you? What's the best way to?
Best way to stay in touch with me, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Vanessa Ferlino. And then Instagram as well. Just my handle is Vanessa Ferlano. And my website, vanessaferlano.com. Book number 2 is on the way, and I am working with a publisher for this one. So that if you want to join the email list so you don't miss that as well, that'd be really great. And then you can also check out the podcast. Every new episode is also launched and released on social media and through the newsletter as well.
And the spelling of your last name is just for anybody listening is
Sure.
Ferlino, which I'm
Yes.
guessing is Italian.
Yes, that is the Italian side of me, indeed.
Okay. Do you know if there's a meaning behind your last name?
I don't know if there's a meaning behind my last name, but my first name in Greek is supposed to be like the origin of something to do with butterfly. I don't really know what it is, but yeah, but I don't know if there's a meaning behind my last name.
Yeah, I speak Swedish as a second language, so it's fun.
Ah.
Sometimes I hear Swedish last names, and like the funniest one I ever came across was Tandberg, Tandberg. Except that when you break it up, tand means tooth and
Ah.
it means mountain.
Oh my
So I'm
gosh.
like, okay, so somebody got saddled with this last Tandberg because they had really big teeth.
That's funny.
And I don't know
Here,
if that's actually the
my
case.
dog has come to say hello.
Oh, hello, baby girl. Hello,
You say
I
hi.
hi.
Ivy, say hi.
Nope, not
She's
interested.
she's busy. She's got something in her paw or her eyes, and she likes. There's this one squirrel here that just loves to taunt her. It's the funniest thing ever. And the other day it came by and with like a peanut or an acorn or something, and literally just like cracked it right in front of her. I was laughing. I mean, animals, they have personalities. I love nature. I really do. I just think it's just beyond amusing. And now the squirrel's gotten very smart, and it brings a second squirrel now. And so what they'll do is when Ivy is watching, they will both like do something, and then they'll run in opposite directions to confuse the dog. It's hilarious. Yeah,
Oh, for real.
nature. Honestly, like they're brilliant. Like they're honestly just brilliant, these animals, and I just love to watch them. Like,
Well, I had a confession about me and my cat on my last show. So if anybody wants to hear that, you have to go listen to the former show. Not repeating the story, but one of the things that I've heard is we have deer in our backyard, and like I have a
oh,
small bird.
beautiful.
So I
Aw.
think we've had up to 8. There is a fawn
Wow.
running around right now. Last year we had twin fawns.
Ah.
The twins are still running around together. They don't have to run with mom anymore, but they're running around. You can see when they're together that they're, still young. And one of my mentors said that he has been able to sit in his yard and actually sit so still that the deer come and eat out of his hand.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I
Like,
love
oh,
that.
now that's a goal. So
Yeah.
but you have to, it's not just about the fact that you have an appealing food. That's not
Yeah.
enough.
No, it's your energy. It's your energy. 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I saw the deer this morning and I'm like, okay, I've got these luscious apples. But it's not enough. I have to go and I actually have to be still enough, bored, if you will, to, probably to sit out there for some time before they would even come close to trusting and coming forward. But
Yeah.
still a
Oh,
goal.
no,
Still a
that's
goal.
that's amazing. I love that. We have and my mom has seen moose in her yard before as well. Those are huge, huge moose. Yeah, actually I was driving the other day because they're just getting closer to the land now, They just get closer and closer every year. But I see, yeah, we had a moose like in our town roads, which is new, but they're beautiful animals and bears. I used to work in a landfill actually years and years ago. One of my first jobs when I was a summer student, and I used to work in a landfill, and we'd see bears all the time. And but the bears, like you'd go and see where they dropped off the furniture, where people drop off furniture, and you'd see the bears lounging on the couches, like they were watching TV. Like honestly, they'd be like sitting there like this. Oh, it was honestly like, and I have photos. Like it's hilarious. Like they just yeah, I don't know. Like animals, there's something. There's a lot we can learn, I think, from animals as human beings because they just be.
They are absolutely fascinating. My latest obsession for Googling, for pastime, for boredom, is
Yeah.
I've been looking up octopus. And
Oh,
right?
brilliant animals.
So
Brilliant.
so
Yes.
they actually say that their IQ is around the age of a 3-year-old.
Wow.
So
No, I read a book recently. I forget what it's called right now, but it was the author was someone who studies like animals and octopus, and she goes through like, she was studying the journey of a couple different octopus in a gallery and how they like escape and can unlock locks, and like they're brilliant. These yeah, octopus are so brilliant.
yeah, yeah, and they can communicate and they do identify
Yeah.
people and so forth. What I found out fascinating, so Minnesota, so we're not so far from where you are, but
Mm.
um, we have a lot of bald eagles. Thankfully, the population has come back
Mm.
significantly. Just learned, by the way, that's not our official national bird, even though it's like everywhere. It's on our
Yeah.
money. We never adopted it officially as the official bird, which is weird. It's still a protected bird. Sadly, I see a lot of windmills, unfortunately, decapitate some of
Mm.
them, but the um the they're beautiful, beautiful birds. And one of the national eagle centers is really close here in
Mm.
Winona, Minnesota. So
Okay.
for my birthday this year, we're going to boat
Oh,
down. And we may not go to the center because we just went last year, but we stay near there on the flats and the sandbars and all that kind of stuff, but they're everywhere and they're just soaring all over the place. But when we went to the Eagle Center, we learned, even though I think there's 3 or 4 birds that are permanent residents at the center, and they're quite old, and they will live to be even older than in nature because
yeah.
they can. Um, but they have no affinity whatsoever for their trainers, for the people that feed
Wow.
them, for the people that care for
Yeah.
them. They
Huh.
could care less. That was one of the things that came up. They said, so the person holding this massive bird, which by the way, for their size, they don't weigh that much.
Huh.
But he said,
Interesting.
yeah, if I never showed up to work ever again, this bird would not care. So
Wow.
yeah, so smart, they're smart,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not don't necessarily, that there's human persons like that as well, so if anybody accuses you of being an eagle, be careful.
Yeah.
Make sure they know what they're saying.
Yeah.
I like the idea of how high they can soar, but
Yeah.
I'd like to
Wow.
think I care about the people that I come in
Yeah.
contact.
That's
So
funny.
thank you. I want to say thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very
Any
much. Thank you for having me and for this
final words?
conversation.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I just, yeah, grateful to be here. Grateful to hold this space and be welcome to follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or vanessaforlano.com.
Well, I am sure people will. I look forward to it as well. And on behalf of Vanessa and myself, I'd like to thank you, listeners, for joining me on this journey to unleash your joyful business potential, wherever that might be. Remember, leadership is a voyage that we take together. So keep shining, keep aligning with your purpose. Own that. It's okay. And come on back next week and every week at 2 p.m. Pacific time, exclusively on winwinwomen.tv to join the live show. And of course, continue to follow us on your favorite platforms as well for our next inspiring episode. So until next time, this is Leanne, your Chief Joy Officer, signing off. Keep leading with heart, and I'll catch you on the next wave of success. Farewell, and keep spreading the joy.